Dr. Siamak Aram, who teaches on AI at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology in the US, says that such understanding is essential to the adoption of AI.
Yeah, my point is that the reason I mentioned before that we need to prepare general population to learn more about AI is to not let them be afraid and be worried about the future of that. Any tool, any technical tool, any modern technical tool may have some disadvantages and advantages, but the side of the advantages of AI is huge, is a thing. So that's why, I mean, there are some episodes of Black Mirror that might be, I mean, might worry some people, some scientists, some governors, some institutes, but at the same time, we have to accept the reality of AI in our life, in a real world. So that's why I'm very positive about AI. I mean, for example, I know people are worried about having some, for example, Google Assistant or Alexa at their home or smart TV in their houses because they think that they watch us, they hear us. I'm not worried about that part. Even if it is true, but this data is helping to updating these models and growing this application let help the future of the human. I'm very positive to that, even with some, for example, a side effect or even with some disadvantages like what Facebook did with some part of the user's data.
Right. I mean, that does go to the other point about this debate. And that other point is that people should be very transparent about what they're doing. And there have been, as you say, these suspicions about people stepping over privacy boundaries and getting much, much closer into our minds, our lives and our houses than we may perhaps know and we may perhaps want.
Yeah, correct. That's why, and that's how policies, regulations can come to the scene and help to make some limitations, some boundaries for these techniques and tools, not to stop them, to let them grow, but at the same time to have some ethical limitations on these techniques and tools.
To go to some of this, and just to touch very briefly on the defense side of it, I interviewed a doctor and a scientist at DARPA, which is the US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, because they had successfully linked a artificial arm to a veteran's nervous system because the person had lost an arm, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. As I mentioned before, AI is here to help us to complete our deficiencies, the different disadvantages to our life. So that's why I'm very hopeful. I'm very positive. I mean, I see, the connection between robotics and AI is very hot topic these days. And Army is all from the creation of the internet until now, they were very progressive to this improvement and developments. As I mentioned, they will help us. AI algorithms, machine learning algorithms, deep learning algorithms, they will helpful to complete our deficiencies with our bodies. I mean, our sensors, our eyes, our ears, to make them complete if there is deficiencies.
Yeah, and in that same interview with DARPA, they were also talking about having developed exoskeletons for people who were elderly to be able to enable them to live in their houses for longer, which is apparently one of the biggest problems that we face as a race. But I did make the point about both of those innovations, the arm that was wired into the central nervous system and the exoskeleton, that those could be potentially used as weapons. So this is about what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned, there are plenty of conferences, there are plenty of debates around the world, especially in Europe, about these potential issues, these potential unethical issues. So that's why I believe that the organizations, companies, big companies, policies, and the regulations and the policies from governments can be helpful in this stage to not let these things happen, like using, for example, these tools like a weapon, or, for example, against a human, or damage some of our life in reality. So I believe they might have, and they will have, and they may have right now some disadvantages to our life. But in general, when you see a big picture of that, they could be useful as well.
Okay, so I mean, there is also, because we're talking about awareness and we're talking about the need for people to understand AI, several times you've mentioned regulators. It therefore becomes essential for the regulators to understand AI.
Yeah, I mean, I attended the conference. The attendees were from the governments, from different institutes, big companies, and universities. That was a huge discussion because they also need to understand each other as well. I mean, that's the connection, the understanding between the governments, in different institutes, private sectors, I believe, is not yet happened. That's why Twitter, Facebook, and some big private sectors in social media, they have their own policies, which is not fit with the, for example, international policies. That's why some countries, especially European countries, they have difficulties and issues with these, for example, companies like Facebook, Google, and Amazon, because they need to understand each other as well.